Hi, everyone. This is kind of a little bit zoomed out map of St. Petersburg, just for you to just to remind you that this is the city on the island, and you can see where, well, it's in English and it's also doubled in Russian. So you see the area of Admiralteyski district, like a big land. It's still islands, but it's like bigger islands, and they don't feel like you in St. Petersburg. You don't really feel like you're on an island because they're so closely connected. And sometimes it's just really a very narrow river that you need to cross to find yourself on another island. You don't really realize that. But it was very different for the part of the city that we're going to be exploring today. So you see the Troitsky Bridge. I have no idea why it's just transliteration, but not the translation. Okay, but the Troitsky Bridge means the Trinity Bridge. So until 1903, that bridge wasn't there. And the islands, so to the right hand side, from the Troitsky Bridge on the map, was considered very isolated, like really isolated, because there was no immediate connection to the big island, to the kind of the mainland. It wasn't there. So, well, Peter and Paul Fortress, this is the first island. But Peter the Great, when he established the city, he was thinking that it would be exactly that area, behind the Peter and Paul Fortress that the city would be developing towards that side. But plans changed, and it would be completely the opposite. So that area remained largely uninhabited, isolated, and seen as a countryside. But things changed when the Trinity Bridge was inaugurated in 1903, and that area very quickly started to change at a breakneck speed. And well, by the way, you can see that there is a botanical garden. Well, that's why the botanical garden really thrived in that area, because it was green. It was mostly like wilderness. So it was the ideal place for the botanical garden to keep it away from everything else. Well, but things changed very quickly, as I told you. And starting from the turn of the 20th century, obviously shortly before the construction of the bridge, well, the inauguration of the bridge, the area started to change. And the Bolshoy Prospect, as you can see on the map, it was the first avenue to be finished and revamped from a small rural street, into an avenue. Prospect means avenue in St. Petersburg. And just in case that's the Trinity Bridge, we crossed it many times before, and we also sailed under the bridge just about a month ago when I did my tours of the cruises by night and by day. So that's the beautiful bridge. And you can see that's exactly the bridge that goes past the Peter and Paul Fortress on an island and just connect the mainland where, let's say, the Winter Palace is, right, with this big part of the city of the Petrogradsky side, the Petrogradsky Island. And the Trinity Bridge immediately um, becomes the avenue. So it joins the Kamенно-Ostrovsky Avenue. You can see it on the map now. It's written in English, so it's going to be easier to follow. And we've already walked this Kamенно-Ostrovsky Avenue. That's the famous Art Nouveau Avenue that's just, I refer to it this way because Kamенно-Ostrovsky is not so easy to remember. But technically, it means an avenue that takes you to another island, to the Stone or Kamenny Island. So there are actually more than just one island in that part of the city. It's also kind of a conglomerate of islands, but they were all seen very rural or were very green, more like getaway destination, getaway place. But it doesn't feel like this anymore. So, but let's explore this avenue, the Bolshoy Avenue. That's the avenue we keep on walking, or the big avenue. As I said, at some point, the Bolshoy Avenue, actually very close, is going to just cross the Kamenostrovsky Avenue. This is the intersection of the two avenues exactly here. So we are still on Bolshoy Avenue, and we are looking at some of the remarkable houses. There are no really palaces in this area because there used to be just country houses, right? There used to be summer houses, wooden houses. And it just was, the favorite getaway place of rich St. Petersburgers. rich because it was still very close to the city, and it was basically a matter of one ferry or just a boat, and that was it. Obviously, it wasn't just a village where any peasant could afford to have a summer house. Definitely not. That was not the case. And then the people who owned plots of land immediately became very rich, and some people could sell or just buy some more land if they had the funds and would build something more than just a small wooden house. They would start building tenant houses, residential buildings, blocks of buildings, like Chubakov family, for example. So this house is, well, one of the landmarks of the area for sure, because it's just one of the, let's say, decorations of the square. It was built by this architect. I have mentioned him before, William van der Gucht. He was the descendant of a Dutch family that originally came to St. Petersburg during times of Peter the Great, the founder of the city. He brought a lot of Europeans and he hired a lot of Europeans back then in the 18th century. And we don't know whether the Van der Gucht family stayed here forever, well, like ever since the 18th century, but we do know that his family had long connection with St. Petersburg. But yes, originally he was Dutch, of course. That makes sense. Yeah. So the square, it's one of the symbols of the square, the Chubakov family. I've never been inside myself, but I found some photographs online. Obviously, all these buildings were very expensive, so they had to be beautiful. They had to have beautiful lobbies, as it's an integral part of every, let's say, high class tenant building. And also, it has, well, there used to be a lot more of these beautiful stained glass, but at least something has been preserved and recently restored thanks to a big volunteer project, Stained Glass of St. Petersburg. So kind of a big revival of the stained glass. And it's just the students of the Academy of Fine Arts, the restorers who like to do a lot of like pro bono work. So the people who, let's see, the owners of the apartments, the residents, the tenants, they just chip in, and they provide construction materials for the restoration, all sorts of materials, and the work is done for free by the volunteers. That's how the project has been functioning for many years now. And I'm sharing some old photographs here of this avenue. So this is already the intersection of the Bolshoy Avenue and the Kamенно-Ostrovsky Avenue. That's the square. By the way, the square, ever since the end of the 19th, well, one of the names is the square of Leo Tolstoy, and it's the modern name of the square. Here in this photograph taken very, very early 1900s, I can't tell you the exact year, but you can see still bits of the old times here. The Chubakov house is already there, but still there are some smaller buildings, and there's still so much space. It is the square, but it doesn't feel the same way it feels nowadays, right? It still has so much more space, smaller houses. You can see that. You can still see some wooden buildings as well. Of course, they are being gradually substituted by stone ones, but originally the architecture is all wooden, for sure. For sure. This is an older photograph. This is probably 1890s. That's the other side of the square. And but you already see the konka, the horse-driven carriage. You see it. So this area, I love this one. I love it, absolutely. So you can see here, perspective Kamенно-Ostrovsky Avenue. You see that there's already some construction going on. You see a fence. So this fence means that there had been a house, but it was taken down, it was torn down, and it was torn down to build a bigger building. And that's what was going on there, well, across 1900s. buildings, old buildings being taken down and bigger ones being constructed. So the construction on the Kamenosovsky Avenue and the Bolshoy Avenue was ongoing. And the entire island was like that. But you can still see some wooden houses at the back. And of course, this area was always in the middle of everything, such as, for example, this is the revolution. This is 1917 revolution. This is the celebration. 1917 revolution, the one in February or March, depending on which calendar you're referring to. Well, and now it looks like this. The square of Leo Tolstoy. The Bolshoi Avenue is exactly where this small pink house is. This is the Bolshoi Avenue, and this is the intersection of the Bolshoi and Kamena Ostrovsky. That's just how it is. You may remember it from the tours I did of the Kamena Ostrovsky Avenue, but if you forgot it or you would like a reminder, for my sponsors, there are more than 1,000 videos now, and there are all the chapters of the Kamena Ostrovsky Avenue with lobbies, some gorgeous examples of Art Nouveau. They are all there. If you have problem locating these videos, just let me know and I'll send you the links. That's one of very few smaller, older examples of architecture that have been preserved in this part of the city is this Institute of Princess Theresia von Oldenburg. This is the architecture of the 1880s, 1870s. And this was the school, an institute for the noble girls. It doesn't mean that there were only, summer houses and small wooden buildings. There were also some hospitals. There were some educational facilities, especially boarding schools. Why? Because this was convenient. It was far from the hustle and bustle of big Saint Petersburg, yet not too far away for the families to be able to visit their children. And also it was cleaner and quieter for the hospitals, and also it was better for educational processes. Who was Theresia Theresia von Oldenburg? She was actually wife to Prince George de Beauharnais, and Prince George de Beauharnais was one of the children of Grand Duchess Maria Nikolaevna, who was the daughter of Emperor Nicholas I. And a lot of as you know, a lot of Romans were into lots of charity activities and established all sorts of charitable organizations. So let's say the family of the Grand Duchess were very involved in all sorts of cultural activities and educational activities. So that's why it was only natural. For example, Maximilian de Beauharnais was the president of the Academy of Fine Arts for some period of time. And Maria Nikolaevna herself was involved in a lot of educational facilities, and their children continued the same line of duty, so to speak, and established educational facilities for girls. So in this postcard, you can still see how the Bolshoi Avenue, La Grande Perspective, connects to the perspective de Kamenostrovsky, and to the left-hand side, you can still see the building of the Institute for the Noble Girls of Theresia von Oldenburg. That's this intersection. It already has electricity. You see, it has the street lamps. It has the trams already, not the horse-driven trams, but just the trams. So it's already becoming, one of the central avenues. Yet just one wooden building is still there. You can see it to the right-hand side. It's just the jam which will very soon, unfortunately, would very soon disappear. But you can still see the glimpse of the old life, but not anymore. You can see, so on the spot of that wooden house is now a much bigger tenant building. But up until, let's say, 1905, 1907, the Bolshoi Avenue would finish exactly at that spot where we are now. Like, you see the map, On the map, it's all in Russia. It's all in Russian. But what you need to see the two red lines. You see one red line that intersect a longer red line. So the longer line is the Kamenostrovsky Avenue, and the smaller one, the shorter one, is the Bolshoy Avenue. And it would stop. It used to stop. It used to finish exactly at this square of Leo Tolstoy. And the other area was for it used to be there used to be a hospital. There also was a very it was also a big empty plot of land that was used for all sorts of sport activities and open door activities for St. Petersburgers. There was summer sports, winter sports, and a lot of different sports clubs would arrange all sorts of activities there. And right behind it, there would be already the land that belonged to one of the hospitals. This is just somebody's running competition. Um, there was there was horse racing competition. There was a velodrome as well cyclodrome. What do you call it? And there was a big society of cyclists, amateur cyclists. There was a society of amateur horse riders. There was a society of amateur football players, and many other sport clubs would take part in a lot of activities in this part of the city. And yeah, and indeed, historically, from the 18th century, this area was seen as the best place for outdoor activities because it's green, because it's in the nature, yet it's not really far away, and it's relatively convenient for people to come. Oh, this is my favorite. This was chess game. Human. Humans are chess figures here. This is just some fun activity that was arranged by the Society of Amateur Cyclists. They decided to throw human chess game. I don't know why, but I love this photo. Absolutely love it. So that's what it used to be. Or, okay, so the cyclodrome, the competitions there. And then things changed. In just this very short period of time, it changed. A group of architects decided to build the continuation of the Bolshoy Avenue until, if you can see, on the in the upper section of the map, there is a body of water. That's the Karpovka River. And you can see also on the map this light green cross. This is the square. This is the Leo Tolstoy Square. And then they decided to continue the Bolshoy Avenue up until the spot where the avenue meets the Karpovka River. And we're going to explore that section, a very short section of that Bolshoy Avenue area. And it goes exactly, well, you can see, you can just kind of compare the two maps. There is a new section of the avenue on the map from the right. I know the maps are in Russian, but I think I'm being quite accurate here and hopefully really understandable, and you can find it on the map. And it was exactly thanks to Mr. Rosenstein and a couple of fellow architects who decided to unite, find investors, and build the street, the continuation of the Bolshoy Avenue, because they knew this area would need more buildings, would need more streets, and would need more access to the Karpovka River, which was an important transportation artery that connected this island with the other islands, which were seen as the next most expensive real estate area. And yes, many of those architects and investors, merchants were Jews. Yep. Okay, so the Rosenstein house. By the way, on my tours of the Kamenostrovsky Avenue, I have spoken about this house before, and a couple of buildings next to it, because they are seen as one of the highlights of the avenue anyway. But I'm going to be just repeating myself, but really, really briefly, because we have so much more to cover today. One of the architects who worked on the, let's say, the image and the looks of this area was Andrei Belogrud. Andrei Belogrud was really into this historism, neo-romanticism style, and Belogrud also worked in Art Nouveau. And this house is kind of this um, reprocession, of the old, let's say, medieval architecture because it looks like a castle. And it's, well, there are very few buildings of the same style in St. Petersburg. It was quite new to St. Petersburg, but it was the time, and these people were at liberty to exercise their imagination and just, playing with it. Another building was, it also belonged to Konstantin Rosenstein. He just hired several architects to help him design the area. And this house is just called the house with the statues, or Rosenstein house. Uh, this house stands out. It's very dark. It's kind of the northern neoclassicism with some elements of historism and all those sculptures. There are a lot of questions whether, like, what inspired Rosenstein to build these houses, to design them this way. But you know what I absolutely love? I found these photos online. There are some, institutions, there are some organizations that are renting rooms in this house. And you know what? They still have these gorgeous fireplaces, and they are original to the building. So they are from early 1900s. It's just crazy. And also on one of the tours of the Kamenetsky Avenue, I did take you inside in one of the apartments in this building because friends of our family live in this house. And I shared the video of their apartment, of their fireplaces, some of the decorations. Crazy. So some experts claim that the biggest source of inspiration to put sculptures on the roof was the Winter Palace. Because the Winter Palace, and yes, as you can see, the Winter Palace used to be of a very different color back then. Before the revolution, at the same time these houses were being constructed, the Winter Palace was of the scarlet red color. Yeah, and I can see the resemblance. So maybe it was the Winter Palace that inspired Rosenstein to place the sculptures there, but no idea. And you know what? Nearly every building in this very short section, actually, it's like 5 buildings from both sides of the street. There are 10 buildings. Well, this is the Sokolovsky house, the green one, light green one. It just belonged to a merchant, Sokolovsky. Every house in this very short continuation of the Bolshoy Avenue are works of art. They were built, they were seen as the really big investment. They were built, they were aimed at a certain, they had a certain target audience. They were expensive. From the very beginning, they would be very expensive pieces of real estate. And, they paid off. Well, they didn't. That's the big question. So as I'm showing you these buildings, I'm going to be sharing the story. So they finished the construction by like early 1910, and obviously nobody would be spending their own money. It would be loans from the bank. The interest rate was very low, so it was really, well, it was obviously not everyone could afford it, but people who had the money, they could afford taking the loan and paying the interest rate and everything. And then, in fact, the returns in St. Petersburg were very quick, but nobody could have, of course, foreseen the revolution coming and the nationalization. In this house, in the next house next to Sokolovsky, the Goncharov house, there is a nice cafe. I'm also taking you to the places where I used to go myself. So there was a nice cafe with music, live concerts nearly every evening. and it was all centered around wine, coffee, and music. They even had the wax figure of Elvis there. They had a lot of musical instruments in the decoration. They had really, really nice live concerts nearly every evening, and I used to go there quite often, maybe once a couple of months. Beautiful place. I like it how they placed coffee beans like on the wall. I remember they have this trumpet, and from the trumpet they had like coffee beans being spilled, but they are all like attached to the wall. I like it. So it's all about music, coffee, and wine, and that's it's like a legendary place. Baranovska House registered to the wife of a merchant Baranovsky, also of a Jewish descent, by the way. So it's like nearly every house in this area either belonged to a Jew or was designed by a Jewish architect. I think it was some sort of meaning well, of course, kind of a gang of Jews that decided to just not only to earn money, but also to they developed a big plot of land. They did like it was a major undertaking, building the road, cutting down the trees, purchasing the land. In order to just, earn this much, they had to invest so much into this. It's just a major undertaking, but it was ingenious because this is still some of the most expensive areas of St. Petersburg. The only thing that they really, really miscalculated was the revolution. Just that. Crazy, crazy. Yeah, this is where we are. We are just by another river. That's the Karpovka River. And after the Karpovka River, another island began. And they just built this road as another entry point, as another access to the Karpovka River, and another access to the next island. By the way, on the top of the Baranovska house, there used to be an eagle. Nobody knows where it is now, but that eagle was made by Artemy Ober, who was a really big sculpture artist who, for example, created the big eagle for the Zinger house for the famous house that belongs to the Zinger sewing machine factory. Another very big uh, eagle, but I we don't know where that eagle disappeared to and what that eagle and if that eagle had any connection with America because Bronovska House had no relation to America, but the Singer House had the lion eagle, not the lion, the eagle, because it was an American company. So that makes sense here, but doesn't make sense there. So nobody knows what this island had to do with Baranovska. Um, we move on. So I'm kind of showing you the area. You see the Karpovka River to the left side, but we are now giving it, giving some love to another side of the Bolshoy Avenue, just the other side of the street. So this house that belonged to, this house belonged to Alexander Dalberg and Johanna, I think Johanna Augusta Koendorfer. Sometimes buildings could belong to several landlords. It was also fine because it was just a business. It could be a partnership. It could belong to an entity, to a company, to a plant, to a factory. It could belong to any foreign business, by the way. And it was all okay. I found some photographs online of one of the apartments that was put up for sale in this house. Once these apartments are put up for sale, you can see, some interiors, and it's okay. These photos are in open access. I'm not sharing anybody's private photographs. I don't have access to private resources. And in these houses, very often there are still beautiful fireplaces preserved in the apartments and sometimes in the lobbies as well. So this is kind of also interesting, eclectic building. Clearly some Art Nouveau ideas, but the next one I think is probably one of my favorite, the Diderik's house. Diderik's house belongs to the Diderik's family. Robert Diderik's was the founder of a company that produced musical instruments, mainly pianos. And speaking of musical instruments, we're heading to the museum with a musical instrument in 55 minutes from now, which means I'm gonna hurry up, but it's okay. I don't think I'm even going to overrun. So Alexei Bubir was the architect who was in charge of this project initially. However, Alexander Bubir was very into Art Nouveau, and Diderix wanted something a bit more reserved in in the style. And that's why he hired then another architect, Nikolai Vasilyev, who you may remember because I once showed you the beautiful mosque that was built not really far from where we are now. The beautiful mosque built in early 20th century as well. And Nikolai Vasilyev later on, after the revolution, immigrated to the States and built quite a lot of, quite a lot in Chicago. He also built in some other states. He built a Russian church. Yeah, but he was mainly based in Illinois, I think. Well, anyway, you may remember on my other tours, I shared more of Nikolai Vasilyev. He also built a lot in Germany, especially in the area where a lot of Russian immigrants used to live. That's the house. And so, but you know, Bubir is one of my favorite architects, and I'm so happy that he had, well, all these names, all these architects, Bilogrud, Bubit, Rosenstein, they were involved in so many projects in this area because this area happened to be developing at the same time when Art Nouveau came into its own. By the way, speaking of Bubit, I still just wanted to remind you of some of the buildings he was in charge of, such as this one. I mean, this is like a famous Bubit house with this one is a famous Blueberry house. They look like fairy tales. They look like castles from fairy tales. They were always decorated with great number of different, like, whimsical fairy tale characters, animals, intricate designs. It was all there, but wasn't. But sorry, Robert Diderix wanted something more reserved. He was a really big businessman, like really, solid. And it says here Robert Diderix. It's the initials and on the facade. Gutzkevich House, Gutzkevich, another Jewish merchant. Gutzkevich, well, I like it that well, it's not was not really common between the architects and the proprietors to coordinate architectural style. It wasn't really a thing back then. Now it is. You have to coordinate it with the if you let's say if you're given the permission to build in a certain area, you need to follow some guidelines. You need to follow some rules. But back then, no. But I like it that these houses kind of are not really that crazy different from each other. And here, Andrei Belogrud was in charge of the decoration, was in charge of the facade. And also it has a store, Kusville, that I love. It's one of my favorite food stores. And I still miss the food from there. I used to go there quite often because it's one of the closest uh, food stores, well, the branches of this food store chain from where we used to live. So I used to go there very often. Another house with this pink pilasters, the cat columns, semi-columns, is the Kalme house, sorry for the typo, and clinic. So the upper two floors were the clinic. It was a private hospital of Mr. Kalmeyer, who was a German, and the other three floors were just residential apartments. So, and it was totally okay. So it's all private property. If you want, you could even house a theater and then above the theater build apartments. Nobody cared. You just had to follow some rules. You just had to, agree that with the administration, with the city hall. Other than that, you could do whatever you wanted. And obviously, at some point, another floor was added, probably after the perestroika. I don't know. I have no idea when the floor was added. I was about to sneeze, but that didn't happen. Oh, that's just no, that's just horrible. It's the worst feeling when you're just about to sneeze and then it doesn't happen. Oh, such a disappointment. Okay. Maisel House. Maisel House is okay, one of the buildings that once facade of it faces the Leo Tolstoy Square. And it's yeah, and believe it or not, but Maisel House was built, well, belonged to Maisel, who just had a pharmacy. It doesn't mean that everyone who opened a pharmacy could afford building a house. But the Maisel had a chain of pharmacies in the city, and well, I guess it was just cheaper for him to build a house and just pay the rent. Well, all these people were really good entrepreneurs. You see the facade of the Maisel house during the Soviet period. That's, I believe, 1930s, I believe. I'm not sure. And you know what? Maisel had enough funds, so his pharmacy was doing really great because in that house they used Villeroy Boch tiles. Just even in the lobby, it's Villeroy Boch, guys. Just in the lobby. So pharmaceutical, industry, pharma industry, yeah, it was doing very well at all times. And just check out the beautiful stove, huh? Right? I mean, that's the lobby, that's the stove. And now I'm taking you to the museum of Alexander Popov, and I'm taking you to another island. So, um, we are now just by this body of water that just intersects the entire map. That's the Karpovka River. And we need to cross the bridge and we need to walk like altogether 60 minutes to the area very close to the botanical garden of Peter the Great. And I'm taking you to an institute, Radio Electrical Institute. Have a look. It looks like a castle, but this is an institute. Electrico-technical, radio electrico-technical institute of St. Petersburg. So apart from being the area for hospitals, botanical garden, uh, country houses, it was also the area where there was enough space to build big research facilities. And it was still before the bridge was constructed. This is another island even. So this area was seen as really, really distant area, really far away from civilization, and it just had enough. It felt, a bit isolated, and it just had enough land for a big research facility. Isn't it just amazing? And I've never taken you to that area for a live tour. And you know what? This happens to be the area of this Electrical Technical Institute where the body of Grigory Rasputin was burned in one of the kilns of this institute. Huh. And I was going to take you there summer of 2020, 2022, but somebody had other plan. Yeah, couldn't be helped. And just some photos from the inside. I have been inside, but I haven't been to the library. The library, I mean, this institute was named after Alexander III, father of Nicholas II. So this facility was constructed in the 1880s, and that's just, a big imperial style research facility. And obviously, because it was really far from everything else, it was like a town within a town, and they were like it was like two islands apart from the mainland, still with no bridges involved. They built like really big campus with dorms for students and also buildings for professors. And this is where Alexander Popov happened to have his apartment. Sorry, I just need to change my position about that. So this is the house where Alexander Popov and other professors that taught and had research, well, did any research, at the institute. This is where they lived. This is the professor's house. The professor's house happened to have also a stove, of course. It's not as beautiful as the one with the Mason house, but who cares? This is Alexander Popov. So a physician, so not a physician, a physicist, not a physician, physicist, a professor of physics, the head of this electrotechnical institute, uh, and he one of the biggest physicists in Russian history, the person who had patents all around the globe, and almost the inventor of the radio. Like he was one of the maybe a handful of people who worked on the construction, on the development of the radio, based on the works that were published by Hertz. But it just happened that Guillermo Marconi was the first one to apply for a patent, and Popov was just late for it. But anyway, I'm showing you here Vladimir Lenin. What on earth had a Bolshevik revolution have to do? What did it have to do with the Popov Museum? Nothing. But after the revolution, in order to save this institute and also the apartment of Alexander Popov, who had been long dead by then. Popov died in 1905 from a stroke, a hemorrhage in the brain. Horrible, horrible death. He was like 46 years old only, 49, don't remember now. So, but Vladimir Lenin in 1917, summer 1917, was running away from the czars, from the police of the provisional government. Not by that time, there had no longer been monarchy. From the provisional government police. And wherever Lenin passed by, wherever Lenin just dropped by for a minute, every building would be given a plaque, and become a memorial. And the people were very clever. They just put two and two together and said, during Vladimir Lenin indeed gave a speech to the students of this Electrical Institute. That's true. That goes without doubt. But they say that he also had to flee from the provisional government police, and he did it through this building, particular, and through the apartment of Alexander Popov, and it had no longer been the apartment of Popov because he had been dead by then, but it was just, a communal apartment. And this is how later on it was decided to preserve the apartment and make it a museum and connected to Vladimir Lenin. That's the story. Crazy. But it worked. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had probably the museum of Alexander Popov at all. By the way, there's still his, badge with a name on the door, and that's his family. Alexander Popov was from the Urals, from a really, really far away. His father was a priest, and Popov actually was he was going to become a priest. His father wanted him to become a priest. He himself wanted to become a priest, and he started at the seminary in Saint Petersburg, which is because it just happened to have some of the best, schools and seminaries in the country. Well, like, of course. And during the studies, he just realized it wasn't really his thing, and he wanted to try himself in mathematics because he was, from the very early childhood, he was really good at it. And this is how he started. He became a student of one of the institutes in St. Petersburg, and that's how his crazy career started. He showed such talent and ambition that very quickly after his graduation, he already became a professor. And later on, he was given a position of the head teacher and then just the dean of the institute. Crazy, right? Absolutely crazy. And he was given this apartment. He lived here with his family. They had four children, and that's one of his kids playing the piano in the living room. The museum is not so easy to access, not so easy to film in, but we have what we have. Thank you so much, Oleg, for trying to film it. And I also have some photos from my visits, and I've never, ever, ever taken any tourists there. The apartment looks a little bit empty, but I know why. Because it doesn't have wallpapers on the walls. It just has this very bright walls almost everywhere but the dining room, and there are only four rooms available for visit, but actually the apartment had 10 rooms. Well, obviously, but it was the decision of Popov himself, because Popov was very much health conscious person, and he wanted to keep the apartment clean, and he wanted to get rid of all sorts of insects and pests, and that's why they decided to not to have wallpapers on the walls. They couldn't afford having upholstery, silk upholstery. It didn't make sense, and it also collected dust, so they just covered the walls with the paint. It wasn't really common, among aristocrat. Well, he wasn't aristocrat. He was a son of a priest, but he was the member of the intelligentsia. And well, but that's why the apartment looks a little bit empty. However, it has all the memorial items in it. Everything belonged to the family, or what contemporary, or is added because those things were partly from his study in the institute. For example, in the living room there is this table. This table and the lamp, they come from the study of Alexander Popov from the institute. It was brought here and placed here. So it doesn't mean that everything you see was from the times when Popov lived in this apartment, but everything has something to do with the family. And Popov was one of the first people on the entire island to have a phone, a private phone. Why? Mainly even not for him, but for his wife. This is his wife, and his wife was one of the first women in St. Petersburg who was given a doctor's license, and she was given permission to work as a doctor. A woman doctor was a big deal, and it wasn't really a common thing at the turn of the 20th century in Russia. Huh. So that's a big deal. And his wife opened her practice, and she had her doctor's practice in this apartment, and she needed the phone more than he did, because she had patients, she had a secretary, and she needed, this on a daily basis. That's why she needed to have a phone. A unique family. That's crazy. But this is the furniture from their living room. His children, the children of Alexander Popov, kept everything during the Soviet period. Mainly, it was his eldest son Stefan who kept everything neat and made sure that even during the siege of Leningrad, everything was safe. And in order to preserve everything during the siege of Leningrad, he gave everything, he donated everything to one of the museums, and it's not a private museum. It belongs to a network of museums of St. Petersburg. As I said, so yeah, Popov is not known outside of Russia as the inventor of radio, but in Russia, we consider him the one who invented the radio. But it doesn't really matter. What matters is that he was recognized as a scientist of a world class, because he had his patents registered all around the world, and I'm just providing you just several of them. I just asked ChatGPT to give me the dates when the patents were filed, when the patents were approved and issued. And you know what really surprised me? is that one of the patents, well, there were several that were registered in the Great Britain. It took them like literally less than 2 months to issue the patents because they were some of the very, very important inventions, such as the improvements in the coherence for telephonic and telegraphic signaling. Popov, before becoming the dean of the Electrotechnical Institute, this building we saw shortly before, he worked for the Navy for about a decade, and he used to live in Kronstadt. This is the beautiful island in the Gulf of Finland, where we had some really fantastic live streams, and we even cruised out in a private boat with our own captain, on the bumpy waters of the Gulf of Finland. It was like really epic. I hope you remember it. If not, some recordings are available, but like not all of them, unfortunately. But I did also some Zoom tours of Kronstadt just in case. But anyway, I'm just also keeping this info here for you to, familiarize yourself with the inventions. It's just, some of the patents, like some of them. And he designed a lot of things and upgraded a lot of things for telegraphic communication, especially at sea. And this was important. And all these countries, all these patents were registered. And he was getting a lot of money from this patent, from the use of the patents. So he was just a little late with the radio, but he had really, really good income from those patents. Really good. Apart from having a really good salary at the institute as well. But apart from being just a scientist, he had a hobby from his childhood, carpentry, and he liked, working with wood. He liked to create things, to, build stuff, and he even made this chess table by himself. It does look like it's been it's handmade. So it was made by Popov. That's the chess table built by the scholar, by the scientist. And it's like a combination of different kinds of tree. Wood, I mean, right? You could see that. So, yeah, this is the dining room, my favorite room in the house. It has some family photographs, and I absolutely loved it. I read it in the memoirs of his children that during like gatherings, this is the same dining room. And Popov was very outgoing, easygoing, and the family had a lot of friends, and there were a lot of gatherings, and there was a tradition. They like to make dumplings together, and it's one of the traditions in my family too. I'm half of my family is from the Urals, half of my family is from Siberia. My mom is from the Urals, my father is from the Siberia. I was born in Siberia, and Siberia and the Urals are known for their dumplings. Maybe that's why I'm so much into Georgian dumplings too, because it's in my blood. I think I have a gene responsible for dumplings. Maybe even a chromosome responsible for dumplings. Is there a dumpling chromosome? I don't know. Maybe that's a mutation. Anyway, and we also have this tradition for big gatherings, for big family gatherings. We just sit down and make dumplings together, and they just do it on that very table. Love it. I love it absolutely. And there are also a lot of paintings on the walls. The paintings were mainly done by the sister of Popov. That's her self-portraits. And thanks to her portraits, there are a lot of illustrations of the apartment and also of the people. This is the father, for example, of Popov, but it's painted from the photograph when he was younger, the priest. And there are also a lot of photographs. The thing is that Popov, by the way, this is his last visit to this small neighborhood in the Urals. and this is the family, this very big Popov family. That's his father in the center, and Popov himself, I think I have it zoomed in, is this man to the left in the front row. That was Popov. I think you could recognize it. Uh, Maybe I should go back a little bit just for you to see. That's him to the left, to the front row. And Popov had a big hobby, and not just him, but his sons too. They all had codex. Photography was a really, 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 really big hobby of Popov. And, Popov liked to take pictures of things he saw, not just, big stage photographs, big family portraits. No, he just liked to take photos of the apartment. He liked to take photos when the light was beautiful. Of course, it was black and white, but they couldn't even have dreamt of color photography at that point. And Popov just liked to take family photographs, not stage, but just capturing moments as much as he could, of course, because exposure was pretty long, but it was it was beautiful. He was really good at it. Plus, he knew the physics of it. He developed photographs himself in the apartment. He had a small, like a, photo processing, room. Well, kind of. And he did everything himself. And because there were so many photographs that were well preserved by Stefan and other family members and the sister of Popov, she lived together with them for some time. Uh, it was really easy for the museum to restore the apartment because because it was communal apartment. After the revolution became the communal apartment. Before the revolution, when Popov died, another professor settled down here with the family because it didn't belong to Popov. It was just given to Popov and his family. So the family had to move elsewhere to another island. But the family was well off because they kept getting the proceeds, and all the income from the patents. So it was okay. But family kept everything. And when the time came for the museum to open, and by the way, these are all, these are all this, it's really connected to my previous tour, the Museum of the History of Photography, because you can see this is his codex to the left, like a big black box. That's the codex that belonged to Popov, and also this stereo photography. He was really into this stereo photography. Also, here we had some carpentry, instruments, and these are the what do you call it? Oh my goodness, ski. No, what do you call it? It's the skates, the ice skates. Oh, this is the carpentry instrument, and there were the skates because he was really physically active. He liked to hike a lot during the summer. During the winter, the entire family would go ice skating every weekend, and they would mainly do ice skating on the Karpovka River, just like 10 minutes walk from here. And during his free time in the evenings, he liked to, work with wood, carve some stuff. And also, as I told you, some of the, tools and instruments were brought from his study, in the institute, because it's his apartment. But, it is all now part of the museum exhibition. And this was brought from his study. That's the codex. These are the photographs I also sourced from the internet. And this is like a really, really good quality photographs. This is the codex. Crazy. It looks more like a small, like a portemonnaie or like a bag, or a purse, but it was much more portable than, from what there used to be before. We know that. And there's some photograph that he took. They like to go, to the nature, so to be outdoors. The family was really, really into hiking. All of them, the entire family was very active. So they never really just sat at home, but they loved being at home. They loved, entertaining people, cooking, eating together, everything. So he just lived a very full life. And then his death in his late 40s was a shock, was the absolute shock, because it was just, hemorrhage to the brain. So he died from stroke. It was such a blow to just the entire country. Horrible. But he had accomplished so much during his short life. then I wouldn't have accomplished in a million years. So another, just one more thing to my inferiority complex. Okay, so I think this is it. And I told you I wouldn't overrun much, and I haven't really overrun. Let's have the Q&A. Oh, I see a lot more people have joined. Hi, everyone. I didn't even see that. Let me say hi to you. Let me open the chat. Yeah, the chat is open. If you joined us later, it's been recorded, so you will be able to watch the recording at your own convenience once I share it, hopefully very soon. Let me see. Let me see. Yeah, the chat is okay. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'm so happy to see you all. Before questions start coming in 30 minutes from now, 20 minutes from now, I'm taking you to a gorgeous Sheremetyev Palace in the heart of St. Petersburg, to the Museum of Musical Instruments, and we'll see the gorgeous interiors, and we'll see, well, even today we're going to see some, important musical instruments. So I can't wait to take you there. Again, I'm taking you to all these small niche museums and this very untouristy area of St. Petersburg, not because there's nothing to see in St. Petersburg, bigger St. Petersburg, but because this is like something nobody would have taken you to, you know? It's just me, to take it there, even virtually, because it's the only thing I can do. So you see the links. So tomorrow I'm doing 3 tours. I'm taking you to the pre-recorded tour because it can be otherwise, to another house and museum in a gorgeous 19th century apartment of Ilya Chavchavadze in Tbilisi. Big deal, gorgeous apartment, lots of, 19th century things, personal belongings. Then Misha's going to be talking about the poetry of late 1960s and 1970s and Soviet Russia. This topic is not really that well started, so Misha's done a really good research on that. And then I'm taking you to Tel Aviv. I'm taking a short break, just one more week away from Jerusalem's stones and dust of the archaeology. I'm taking you to the Museum of Nahum Gutman, one of my favorite Israeli artists who witnessed this country change, evolve, and he witnessed the construction of Tel Aviv. And he just also depicted Jaffa so vibrantly, so atmospherically, really amazing. So I'm just taking you there for a change. Pelperi, hi dear. Thank you for sharing your memories walking through the Petrograd side field special. Many Finnish stonemasons and architects actually helped. That's true, Pelperi. A lot of Finnish and Swedish architects, that's true. I've spoken so many of them on when I did the tours of the Kamenostrovsky Avenue. I brought up so many names. Lidwell, for example, is one of them. Many more, and a lot of buildings look like Finnish Art Nouveau, like Northern Art Nouveau. The dark stone, dark granite on the facade, a lot of owls and other whimsical creatures of the woods. Yes, Valkyrie, you're very right. That's probably the most Finnish area of St. Petersburg you could find. That's absolutely true. Yes. Thank you so much for it. So, dear friends, if you enjoyed this tour, I am really happy. This is like area really dear to my heart, not touristy at all. But as you see, there is so much to see far from the tourist trails, and I'll be taking you to more of those areas. But in 20 minutes, 15 minutes from now, I'm taking you to a very touristy area. It's just somehow that I haven't really taken you to this palace before, but we've been around that area so many times. So thank you for joining me. I would appreciate your support. Maria is saying, dear Anna, there is really no reason for you to have an inferiority complex. I'm sure your tours on a wide variety of topics matter for a lot of people, yours truly included. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria. But when I talk about so many great people like on a daily basis, and I just realize, and I get to meet so many talented artists, in Tbilisi, like every day. So it just kind of really gets me thinking, what am I doing? But well, I understand, of course. I think we all can relate to a certain extent. Thank you so much. It's really sweet of you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you everyone for joining. If you feel like supporting me, you can do that by either sending me a PayPal donation or buying me a coffee. And thank you for those who have already supported me and does this on a regular basis. That really means a lot to me. And I'll see you in St. Petersburg virtually, unfortunately, in 15 minutes in a really, really beautiful location. Thank you so much, everyone, and bye bye. Thank you, Mario. You're very sweet. I'll be sharing the recording as soon as I can.